come from deep within. I'm a speech for style, my skin. I ain't no country boy.
Hello. So, we're here with another episode where we kind of delve into history and find some folk to talk to. Well, not really talk to, but more like read about, and we discover what their mind was. Last week we talked about, her name was Sarah Good, and it was very interesting finding out about that. I'll have the link in the description or at the end of this video. But it was interesting finding out about how she was one of the first black woman inventors. Let's see, born in 1855, passed away in 1905. But she's known for, shouldn't give it away. Hey, if you want to check out the video too, that's cool. But she was known for inventing the cabinet bed. And there was one that was in the schematic she had, where she had, yeah. What do you call that? Oh my God. Anyway, so, patent. So when she had it patented, it was a roll top. I haven't seen any pictures of that one per se, but that was really cool. Anyway, so after that one, and I think it was the same day, I was looking at something else to be able to talk to you about, and I found, I kind of stumbled, because I was like, the way that I find these stories, these, ideas for the podcast here, is to just Google people in history. I have absolutely no plan, because I want to kind of discover with you on some things. So I don't do a heck of a lot of delving into history and fact checking and all that. That's what a lot of other people do. I've been kind of like researching on YouTube people who kind of are history buffs and talk about things. I just want to talk about stuff. I enjoy talking on this podcast, and I enjoy doing it. And in the meantime, in between talks with real people, well, these are real people, but past, I kind of delve into some things that are interesting. So, in that search, I found this interesting list. So, I'm going to let you check this out. 6 historical figures who may or may not have existed. So, it says from Britain's most loved. Oh, man, I'm adding words. Yeah, let me read it up here. I can't see that down there. From Britain's most beloved outlaw to founder of Sparta. I like that movie. Find out more about 6 historical figures whose existence remains up for debate. Now, the first one, I don't know who that. I think that's Homer. I don't know that guy. Never met him. Anyway, first one is King Aurthur. I'm just gonna go ahead and read this. I mean, it's kind of, for those of you who are listening. All right, King Aurthur, the first one on the list. Okay, the protector of Camelot is one of history's most well-known monarchs, but many scholars believe his story to be a legend on par with the sword in the stone. Remember that story? The brave King Aurthur is traditionally described as having repelled a Saxon attack on Britain in the 5th or 6th century. But while he supposedly won a series of 12 battles against the invaders, the great king is not named in the only surviving history of the conflict. That's really suspect. He might have been an alien. Okay, I don't know. In fact, a full description of Arthur did not surface until the 9th century, and an account of Lady Guinevere and the famous Knights of the Round Table only appeared with Geoffrey of Monmouth's 12th century text, History of the Kings of Britain. Even if the modern day depiction of Arthur as a knight in shining armor is a myth built up by books like Sir Thomas Mallory's that word, Le Monte d'Arthur, I guess. Some historians still believe these tales were based on a real person. I could see that. I mean, totally see that. Man, it's I have no idea what the kind of culture of those centuries were when it came to like colloquial speaking. Colloquial between people speaking, right? How it was when people were just kind of talking amongst themselves. I mean, I think about today. I mean, you tell a bad you tell like some sort of what do you call that, rumor, right? And by the time it gets back to you, it's like a whole nother story, right? So I mean, I can imagine, let's see, the 6th century, I don't know what actual date that is, 1200s, I don't know, where's that, 6th century, 600 AD, I don't know. I'm not in history. I am fascinated by it, but the measuring stuff, that I'm probably contributing to the issue here. I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head about things that interest me, but I would imagine that was probably the seed of the problem then, and how you might hear of a person that's named this, and things are crazy, life sucks, you're hungry, you are kind of at the end of the day, you're around the campfire or the hearth, depending on how much money you make or how much your family has, and you just kind of like, it would be the social media of the day. You're talking about this story you heard or has been going around for years, and you're just like, oh, I heard this new thing about such and such and such and such, King Arthur, blah blah blah, or it might have even began from the actions of a certain person. I don't know, but that's very interesting. I think I finished reading that. Based on a real person. Among other candidates, they argue the Arthur legend may have been inspired by the exploits of the warrior king Ambrosius Ariel. All right, the monarch. I never heard of this guy. The monarch Riothemus, or perhaps even a Roman general named Lucius, Castus. I'm not gonna. Man, these guys' names are interesting. These Latin-based names should be easy because English is Latin-based, I think. Anyway, so I've got like a little video that I want to kind of share with you, and I mean, don't shout at me, because I don't know what's going on. Let's see, where's this guy? Yeah. Okay, so here it is. So it's like 3 minutes long, so just kind of bear with me. I thought it was really fascinating, their take on it. Just letting you know, man, I started digging into this. I didn't do a heck of a lot of research, but I dug into this, and it's like, for every one article I looked at, and was here on YouTube, every video I saw, because I just typed in, was King Arthur real? Every one of them was like different in some way. I'm just like, okay, so there's no way to get to the bottom of this. So I just picked one, the shortest one, and I was like, I'm gonna share this with my listeners and viewers, and I'm just gonna kind of add to the pot of mayhem. So enjoy. We're gonna check this out real quick.
Our shared history is filled with tales of kings and queens, from a Norman conqueror to a regal empress. Among them, no British ruler is shrouded in as much mystery as King Arthur. We all know the tales of Excalibur, Camelot, and the Holy Grail, but did the fabled ruler really exist?
Did he?
Richard, Earl of Cornwall, was the younger brother of King Henry III and one of the wealthiest men in Europe. Around 1233, he eagerly exchanged 3 of his manors for a small, seemingly undesirable piece of land on the North Cornish coast. It was the island of Tintagel, a harsh, rocky headland entirely unsuitable for building on. So why was the Earl of Cornwall so keen to own it? A century earlier, in the 1130s, a cleric named Geoffrey of Monmouth had written a book chronicling 2,000 years of the nation's rulers. He called it the Historia Regum Britanniae, or History of the Kings of Britain. One of the tome's most remarkable tales was about a king by the name of Uther Pendragon, who fell madly in love with Igraine, the most beautiful woman in Britain. To keep her from Uther's advances, her husband, Galois, Duke of Cornwall, sent Igraine away to Tintagel.
Last time I get married.
Even 2 or 3 guards could hold this island against an entire army. But Uther Pendragon would not be stopped so easily. He sought the help of the prophet Merlin, who gave the king a magical potion, so that he appeared to be Galois himself. In this disguise, Uther travelled to Tintagel, fooled the guards, and won over his love. And so, says Geoffrey, King Arthur was conceived on Tintagel Island. According to legend, Arthur was crowned king at just 15. He went on to lead the defence of Britain against Saxon invaders in the mid to late 400s, securing his place in the ranks of heroic kings. We now know that Geoffrey's stories are mostly made up, but nevertheless they thrilled and inspired people across medieval England, one of whom was Richard.
You've got these guys that, you know, they're writers, you know, musicians, writers, anyone that's like in the arts. We kind of have this, I guess, I don't know, we care, I guess, a little bit more than, I wouldn't say care. Maybe we're more sensitive to some things. And I could see this writer, you know, seeing the state of his, I don't know, country or maybe his neighbors, whatever. But, you know, depending on what was going on at the time, he might have been like, hey, you know, I want to write something that will kind of move into the minds of people, kind of, you know, just an entertainer, but move into the minds of people and give them some sort of something to look forward to, you know? Those people were people just as we are. So I could imagine, you know, these creative people just like, hey, I've got to, you know, lighten the load a little bit, lighten the air, lighten the mood. So I could see that. That it's a time where, you know, maybe the rich were very, you know, exacting. Maybe they were taking advantage of, you know, their subjects, you know, which that's not new. That happens today too. You know, the leaders kind of taking advantage of the people that look up to them. Of course, I don't think that it was like, well, no, because it was a, you know, a king is not, that's not a democracy at all, of course. So, I mean, there's no telling what they had to go through back in those days. So I could totally see that. Let's get back to this.
Earl of Cornwall. Having bought the legendary landscape, he set about doing what kings and earls do best.
Ta-da!
He built a castle. Unfortunately, the terrain made construction difficult. The resulting structure was small and had no military value. The garderobes, or toilets, had to be rebuilt several times as they kept falling into the sea. Still, Richard wanted the castle, maybe too.
Falling into the sea. You know, I was thinking about that. You know, okay, I'm getting off. But I was just thinking about that. I have a construction business anyway. And I just think about, whenever I go into places, I always think about, you know, how was that built? How did the builder do this? How this, that, and the other? And thinking about this, if a toilet falls right into the sea, I'm like, man, what happened to the plumbing? Or where does it go? If they're falling into the sea. I mean, of course, this might be I don't know, might not even be real, but this place, from what I understand, actually exists. Now, if the place has the history, or the story attached to the history of it, you know, that's interesting. But Well, it makes sense. I guess, the toilet would kind of empty into the sea or river or whatever. No wonder people died. The knowledge of bacteria and the origins of it, and that it even existed, or even viruses or any kind of disease. The knowledge that we have today didn't, for the most part, exist. That I know of, because I know. Yeah. Anyway, so back to that. I don't know. It's a little going on my little tangents anyway.
Who cements his place in the myth as a worthy successor to King Arthur, or simply because he admired him as a symbol of honour and chivalry. He died in 1272, and by around 1300, the castle was already crumbling in the face of the fierce Cornish weather, but the remains can still be explored today. Many other historic places in England are also associated with the legend of King Arthur. Carlisle Castle is thought to be a possible location of the court of Camelot, while Arthur's Stone in Herefordshire supposedly marks the place where the king slew a giant. King Arthur's Round Table in Cumbria is said to have been his jousting arena, and some even thought that Stonehenge was built by Merlin for Arthur's uncle Aurelius.
So basically, we're just carrying this on. So that's all I want to show you on that. Man, it's crazy just thinking about this, because there's no way to get to the bottom of it. But I mean, I don't think that we really want to know. I don't think we really want to know if this guy lived or anything. I think that I think that we just, kind of like in those days, want to still not as potently. It's not as potently attractive to us. Having these types of campfire stories or whatever stories, but it's neat, especially to make movies on. I mean, you probably remember the movie. I'm going to show you this trailer. I mean, if you'd forgotten it, the official movie. Oh, dude, forgot to tell you this. Wait a minute, is that no? That's the wrong one. Okay, never mind. So the next one on the list that we have. Try not to go too far. I mean, I want to try to do these like 15 to 30 minutes. I'm at 17 minutes. So the next one on the list is, I'm just going to read this one for you. Is Pythagoras. If you remember the Pythagorean theorem, Pythagorean, yeah. Always. I can't remember what I used to call it back in school. I used to love this theorem, but I never did learn how to say it right. Pythagorean is the proper enunciation according to this spelling, if I'm saying it right. Let's see. Pythagoras. We all learned about the Pythagorean theorem in math class, but similarly, elegant proof is not available for the existence of its namesake. According to some accounts, the Greek thinker Pythagoras lived during the 5th and 6th century, which is interesting because the 5th and 6th century is right around that time where the Saxon attack happened in Britain. So that's interesting. By the way, this is all from the History Channel. I will have the URLs in the description below this video. Okay. 5th and 6th century BC. Oh, BC. Good Lord. Can I not read anything? So we're looking at the 5th or 6th century. Okay. AD for King Arthur. I didn't see that BC. Yeah. I need to learn to read. He is remembered as a philosopher and mathematician. Because I was thinking to myself, man, Greek philosopher around with King Arthur? I don't know. That can't be right. No, I was wrong. Philosopher and mathematician, but in ancient times he was better known. It's my air freshener. He was better known as the spiritual father of a cult obsessed with numerology. Cool. The transmigration of the human soul quite bizarrely, the evils of eating beans. Yeah, we wouldn't have gotten along very well. While Pythagoras' hatred of legumes is well documented. That's interesting. I'll have to read that. There is no significant contemporary accounts of his life. Interesting. All references to the great thinker and perhaps also his famed ideas and formulas came from his followers, who called themselves Pythagoreans. Interesting. What stories we do have of Pythagoras are deeply intertwined with myth and the supernatural. See, I didn't know all this stuff about this association with Pythagoras. So I'm learning something today. I've not read this before. I just found it and I was like, I'm going to find out with you guys. One tale describes him as possessing a golden thigh. Okay. Another declares he was a son of the god Apollo. For some reason, these lies and contradictions hint that Pythagoras was simply an exaggerated or even fictional leader concocted by members of a religious sect. Even if Pythagoras did exist, he probably wasn't the first to discover his famous theorem. Evidence shows the Egyptians may have divined the formula much earlier. Probably. I wasn't in ancient Egypt either, so I can't confirm or deny that being true. I don't have anything else to say about Pythagoras. The next one I was wanting to check out and go over with you guys was this one with John Henry. And I want to start out and probably end with this video. I might read some on it, but I thought it was really interesting how this story affected me, and just kind of referencing back to what I was saying, you know, how we as humans, when things are crazy, we kind of either craft or embellish stories that we've heard before when we were kids, especially, you know, before social media, other things to distract us, you know, to just distract us from our current reality and kind of, inspire our imaginations to take us away from where we are. You know, when I was learning about history, specifically Black history in America, you know, these types of stories, like with John Henry, gave me hope of, like, you know, shoot, you know, with all that, you know, dark history of slavery and everything, there's a person that was strong enough to be able to make such an impact to where he wasn't a nameless one. There are many heroes, of course, of that era, that age, that time, you know, that we all know of, you know, Harriet Tubman and many of the others. But, you know, this one is superhero-ish, right? I mean, this guy, John Henry, he, of course, was still bound in a way by the society that he was in and the reality that he was in, because he was, whether physically or mentally, he was confined to working for someone else, you know, which is interesting. But it kind of parallels even Kal-El, you know, when he was here on Earth, he got a job at the newspaper there. I can't remember the name of that. I like Superman, but yeah. So maybe that was John Henry's cover, right? It wasn't much of a cover because he was still pretty strong. I don't know his story that well. Oh well, I know a version, but I want to show you this one. I haven't seen it all the way through, so we'll find out together. So check this out.
Talcott, West Virginia. Here at the foot of the Allegheny Mountains lies a decommissioned railroad tunnel known as the Great Bend Tunnel. According to folklore, this was the site of a famous legend from the 1870s about a superhuman railroad worker named John Henry.
The legend is that John Henry was 6'6", 280 pounds,
Jeez.
muscular, solid, glistening. You could see him half a mile away.
Wow.
The legend has it that he was born in enslavement, and he had all these goals for his family coming out of enslavement. And he says, I want a good job, I want to provide for my family. And he saw the Casino Railroad laying track. And John Henry shows up and says, I'm your guy. The fable has it that any man who signed up to work would get 50 acres of land if they completed the railroad.
It's interesting.
Then sometimes this railroad had to be completed through a mountain. And so John Henry not simply laid the railroad track, but he had to
He was
drive
the
a stake
dynamite.
into the rock, which creates enough space to then load dynamite. John Henry was the best steel driver.
Jeez.
And then here comes a man with a steam drill. The legend speaks of this race taking place between John Henry and the machine.
Okay. I remember that part of the story.
As the story goes, there was a competition between John Henry and the machine to see which of them could drill farthest into the side of the mountain in a single day. During the contest, the strength of John Henry was reportedly so powerful that the blows from his twin sledgehammers shook the mountain itself.
What?
The story is that the steam drill only went 9 feet. John Henry went 14.
Jeez. Okay.
And so John Henry is superhuman and more supreme than the machine.
Wow.
John Henry
And a
beats
steam
the
engine.
machine in this competition, but he passes away. He dies of a heart
Yeah.
attack.
I'd say so.
He dies from overexertion. And what we have here is John Henry begins to symbolize this overpowering physique of a muscle man and the ability to achieve in the face of extreme odds.
The legend of John Henry represents this black man, this hero, who did superhuman feats from the 19th century. It overshadows the harshness of the Reconstruction period, but it also shows us how black men who were able-bodied, who had that spirit of willing to do anything they needed to do to provide for their families.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. That just even kind of falls right in line with that theme that I was talking about. You know how, just to recap, how when things are crazy for us, we kind of either embellish or embellish or completely create a figure that kind of gives us hope, gives us something to dream about. You know, what happened. You know, I've even heard of people talking about, hey, I wonder what his favorite meal was or his favorite color, things like that. And I could see in those days, it would flood, young kids' minds of like, hey, man, I wonder what John Henry would do in this situation, blah, blah, blah. Or, how would he do this? Or how would he think about that? Or, I don't know. So I could totally see that. Really fascinating stuff. Like I said, I haven't done a heck of a lot. I want to kind of find out with you guys. Something catches my eye. I'll just kind of look at it and, and follow it until I get bored. There's another one. I'm not going to go over it. I've got, like 2 minutes. I want, keep it within 30 minutes, but there was a few other ones. I might pick it up later. But Homer, Robin Hood, I don't know who that is. Legumes. But interesting stuff. Yeah, I just kind of like briefly looked at, and it's interesting how that happened. But I think that to wrap this up, the mime is this. I think, kind of revisiting what a mime is in this show. The mime is something that you believe in, something that you're passionate about, something that, inspires you, but how it affects you to be able to produce something that affects your community, hopefully in a positive way. So that's your mime. Those things that you're doing without words, that are, produced by your passion or your profession or whatnot. So that is the mime. So the mime that I see as the connecting silver line, I guess, silver lining in all these, with King Aurthur, Pythagoras, John Henry. Yes, they might not have been real guys, real people, but the silver lining is this: each one of these, for the writers at their time, okay, they produced in people hope. They produced in people a desire to be better than what they were, to climb higher than where they were. And all of these, in some sort of way, make those who consume the content, or if they were actually people, those who met them and those who were affected by them, better. In some way, lighten the load of life and made it easier to exist. So, I just picked these first three, kind of skimmed over these guys, did a little more research on them. Well, not this guy, whatever, legume guy. Lycrius, Greek, no wonder. I love the language. It's Greek to me, right? But I think that's the silver lining. I think that's the mime. It's to create hope, and create within someone the courage to discover their own worth, or to create their own worth. So I think it's pretty neat. Pretty neat. So until the next one, this is goodbye. And let me know in the comments if you want to, want me to look at something specifically. This is really fun. I'm enjoying myself doing one of these a week. And just let me know what you think. And, let's start this dialogue, and let's keep it going. Until next time, bye.
Who I am come from deep within. I'm a speech for style, my skin. I ain't no country boy, cause of my kind of toys. When I get on my knees and I pray to the Lord, you could just get past my cover. You meet a story like no